Spring training is winding down. It's time to start figuring out what this Red Sox team is going to look like. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. This offseason's been extremely weird. From a national standpoint, it's been extremely slow and honestly painful at times to pay attention to. From a Red Sox perspective, they've shot themselves in the foot basically every opportunity they've been given this offseason, so it's been a bit difficult to try and figure out exactly what this 26-man roster is going to look like. But like I just mentioned, spring training's winding down here. We only have a handful of games left before the regular season starts, so it's time to buckle up and figure out what they're going to look like. So what we're going to do in today's video is exactly that. We're going to try and predict the entire 26-man roster for the Red Sox come opening day. That includes lineups, the rotation, the bench, as well as the bullpen on top of that. But before we get into that, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. We're about 200 subs away, so if you want to help us get there, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is actually going to be a two-part video. We're going to do just the roster predictions today. We're not going to talk about any statistical involvement with this roster prediction. All of that will be tomorrow. Records, MVP votes, all-star games, best and worst players. All of that is going to be in tomorrow's video, and we're just focusing on who's going to be on this roster today, so keep an eye out for that one. But in terms of today's video, I think the best place to start is going to be with the Red Sox lineup, mostly because I think it's more of a concrete figure right now than the rest of this roster is going to be. So let's start by predicting exactly what the Red Sox lineup's going to look like. Leading off for the Boston Red Sox this season, I think is very clearly Jarren Duran. His contact and speed lend perfectly to a leadoff hitter. Alex Cora already said that when he's healthy, Jarren Duran is going to be your leadoff guy. Maybe we see some mix and matching against tough lefties, but for the most part, I think it's going to be Jarren. Hitting second and in that number 2 slot, I've got Rafael Devers. Now, I know there's some debate as to where Rafi should be in this lineup, but statistically, the second hole in a lineup gets 40 to 50 more plate appearances than the third or fourth slot do, and you want your best hitter getting the most opportunities possible, which for the Red Sox is clearly Rafael Devers. Hitting third, I've got Trevor Story. Trevor is a bit of an interesting case, right? Because he was pretty bad last year, he was solid the year before, and then obviously in Colorado, he was really good for the most part, and the Red Sox really need right-handed power. Trevor Story, when healthy, should be able to produce that. He should be able to give Rafael Devers some protection in this lineup, which is why I've got him in the number 3 slot. Plus, you break up a lot of these lefties here. Cleaning up this lineup, the person in the 4 spot is going to be, in my opinion, Triston Casas. Now, you could flip Massa and Triston in this spot pretty easily, and I think they will throughout the year. But in my opinion, in terms of who I trust more in a cleanup type role, it's going to be Triston over Massa. In the 5th slot, we've got Tyler O'Neill. Pretty much similar reasoning to Trevor Story. Again, you're breaking up those lefties. You're giving this lineup a bit more power from the right-hand side, and you're going to need that at the top of this lineup, and there's not really any other option, right? This is sort of who you got, so I'm going to put Tyler O'Neill in number 5. 6, Masataka Yoshida. Again, you could flip him and Triston Casas. I like the idea of putting Massa a bit lower in the lineup, a little bit less pressure on him, especially after how he ended last year versus how Triston ended last year. I think this is a good place for him to start off in the lineup. Hitting 7th, I've got Ceddanne Rafaela. I know this might be a bit of a hot take, but if you want your best team on the field right now, I think that has to be with Ceddanne Rafaela. He's been absolutely fantastic at the plate and on the field this spring, and regardless of his status in terms of control, whether it's 2030 or 2031 that you end up losing him in arbitration to free agency, if you want your best team, Ceddanne needs to be in here. In the number 8 slot, I have Manuel Valdez, at least for now. With Vaughn Grissom going down, you've got an option of Pablo Reyes or Valdez. I think if you have Ceddanne, you need that lefty in there, again, just to balance out the lineup a little bit. Valdez has shown that he can hit a bit. His defense looks a little bit better, and it allows Pablo to continue to be that Swiss Army knife. So I actually kind of like the idea of Valdez starting over Pablo Reyes. And finally, rounding out this lineup, I think it's pretty clear Connor Wong's going to be your at least regular catcher to start the season. Not entirely sure what to expect from him at the plate. He's probably going to strike out a lot. Don't know if we're going to see an improvement or it is what it is at the plate with Connor Wong, but he's going to round up this lineup. And that's my lineup for at least opening day or the first couple of weeks of the season. I think it changes a lot once Vaughn Grissom comes back in. While we're at it, let's knock off the bench as well and just get these position players out of the way. I think there's one clear, obvious one, and that's Pablo Reyes. He was the Red Sox spark plug and Swiss Army knife last year. I think he will continue to be the Red Sox Swiss Army knife going into 2024. As for the other spots, it gets a little bit dicey, right? There's a ton of different ways the Red Sox could go. In my opinion, I think another player that ends up on the bench, at least to start the year, is Wilyer Abreu. Now, I actually think he gets a lot of regular playing time and sort of shuffles in between Tyler O'Neill and Ceddanne Rafaela, especially once Vaughn Grissom's healthy, because it helps you balance out the lineup a little bit more. The Red Sox, and I think a lot of Red Sox fans, including myself, are really high on Wilyer, but right now I'm choosing Ceddanne over him for the opening day lineup, but I think he does end up being an almost everyday regular for this team. After that, things get really, really interesting because you've got CJ Cron, Bobby Dahlbeck, and Rob Refsnyder here for sort of your last non-catcher position player. I think I go with Rob Refsnyder. He's been working out at first base this spring. If he can nail that down and be at bare minimum a decently effective right-handed first base backup option, you know what he could do against lefties. He's a more proven commodity in terms of health than CJ Cron and in terms of performance than Bobby Dahlbeck. Plus, he's already on your major league roster, so I think I go Rob Refsnyder over those two. And to round it out, normally I would say Reese McGuire, but Tyler Heineman's been really fantastic this spring. He's hitting really well at the plate. He's thrown a couple of batters out. He looks good behind the plate. And I don't know if Reese McGuire is going to win a battle against him, especially with what he's been doing at the plate this season. I could see the Red Sox making a change here and going with Tyler Heineman, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. To round out my bench, I don't think Reese McGuire makes the Red Sox opening day roster. I think it's Tyler Heineman, which will be really interesting in terms of the effect that that's going to have on the team. The only thing that I think might save Reese is that pitchers do like pitching to him. He's essentially Brian Bayo's personal catcher at this point. Reese might be saved there, but if they could convince Bayo and others that, hey, Heineman's going to be as good, if not better, I think it ends up being Tyler Heineman, and that's who I'm going with here. So that's my prediction for Red Sox position players. Let's talk about the more interesting and sort of whirlwind right now, and that's the Red Sox pitching staff. Starting off with the rotation, I think there's some clear-cut obvious choices here, right? Brian Bayo, in my opinion, is at the top of this rotation right now. Just got the extension. There's a lot of hope riding on who Bayo could be at this point. He is up for the opening day starter role along with Nick Pivetta. I honestly think Brian Bayo ends up winning that out and starts opening day, especially with the extension and everything, and the Red Sox basically just needing some good PR. I could see Brian Bayo winning that spot, which would put Nick Pivetta as the number 2-1 again, battling for that opening day rotation spot. He is on a contract year. He did figure a lot of things out towards the end of the year last year and looked really impressive. I think a lot of people are expecting Nick Pivetta to take a step up this season, and with everything that's going on with the Red Sox rotation, number 2 feels like the exact right spot. In the third hole, I think it's pretty clearly Cutter Crawford in my opinion. Again, we talked about him a couple of times this offseason, but there's a lot of really fascinating underlying metrics with his game, and I think he could be a really integral part of the Red Sox rotation this year. The question is, do you want him in the 3 hole as someone who hasn't historically been a bit of a workhorse? If they are confident that he can start going deeper into games, 5-6 innings every time out there, then I think it's clear and obvious he ends up in the number 3 slot. Number 4, I think, is Tanner Houck, especially with where the rotation is right now. Houck feels like an absolute shoo-in to be in this rotation, but even if the rotation was in a better spot, I think Houck makes it regardless. He has been absolutely fantastic this spring training. We'll see how he finishes it up. MLB or ESPN, I forget which one, already listed him as one of the top 10 performers in spring training this year. His stuff looks much better. His velocity is up. I think he has a real shot to stick in this rotation this season. And finally, we get to probably the most interesting part of the Red Sox rotation, and that's the number 5 hole, because where do you go here, right? Do you go Garrett Whitlock? Do you go Josh Winkowski? Or do you go Cooper Criswell? Now, in my opinion, of the 3 three of those, Winkowski and Cooper both have options. They've already sort of confirmed that Winkowski will not start the year at the AAA level. So in my opinion, Cooper Criswell's a bit out of this, right? There is a outside chance, in my opinion, he starts in the rotation, but I think it's going to be more important that he's major league ready depth at the AAA level, and that's why I'm taking him out of this competition. So between Whitlock and Winkowski, Whitlock hasn't looked super sharp this spring. A changeup looks fine, but he's not getting a ton of swing and misses, and he's getting a lot of hard contact. Winkowski, on the other hand, looks really solid. He's not striking out a ton of players, but he is getting a ton of weak contact, and it's leading to a really solid ERA, which is why, and I think this might be surprising to some people, I think Josh Winkowski ends up as the number 5 starter in this rotation. Now, we'll see how this works. We'll see if Andrew Bailey can work Winkowski a bit better than Dave Bush could back in 2022, where Winkowski was terrible. But I think between the two options, Whitlock's injury history and his performance this spring, Winkowski feels like the better option here, and that's going to be, my opinion, the Red Sox starting rotation. Bayo, Pivetta, Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, and Josh Winkowski. Now let's round this out by taking a look at what I think the Red Sox bullpen will be. Like we talked about in the rotation, there are some guys who are definite shoo-ins to be on the Red Sox roster for a bullpen spot. You've got your two back-end guys, Kenley and Chris Martin, who are both sort of dealing with injuries right now, but who are both looking like they're going to be ready to go for opening day. I think both of those guys get a spot, obviously. I think Brendan Bernardino is an obvious one for the Red Sox bullpen, right? He was sort of your workhorse lefty option out of the pen last year. He looks pretty solid this spring. I don't think there's really anything standing in the way of Brendan Bernardino being in the Red Sox bullpen to open 2024. And then finally, because Garrett Whitlock did not make the Red Sox rotation in this prediction, he's going to be in the bullpen, right? Whitlock was absolutely fantastic out of the bullpen, even in short bursts last year as well. So I'm going to put him in the bullpen as well, which leaves you with 4 open spots in the bullpen to battle it out. And this is where things get really interesting, because there's 7, 8 players who I think could possibly make this Red Sox bullpen. When you're looking at it just sort of from a team perspective, the Red Sox don't have a lefty in their rotation, and Brendan Bernardino is great, but he's probably not going to be able to give you 3 or 4 innings if need be. So in my opinion, you're going to need a lefty that's going to be able to do that, and the only one really available is Chris Murphy. Brandon Walter was already optioned. Joely Rodriguez and Jorge Benitez can't really go those 3 or 4 innings, so I'm going to go with Chris Murphy for one of these spots just because they need that versatility out of the bullpen, and then that leaves 3 options. Justin Slade, in my opinion, is another kind of shoe-in to be in this bullpen. He definitely still has to fight for it, but being a Rule 5 draft pick, he has to be on this 26-man roster or he's returned. Plus, he's been absolutely dominant this spring. We talked about it in yesterday's video if you want to take a look at that, but I think he is definitely going to be in this bullpen. Now we're down to 3 spots. I think another kind of shoo-in, maybe. I think this one kind of depends on what Zach Kelly looks like when he comes back from injury, because I think him and Isaiah Campbell are really going to battle it out for a bullpen spot on the major league team. Both looked really solid before Zach Kelly went down, but I think this ends up going to Isaiah Campbell just due to health and the fact that you were able to see a larger sample size from him in the spring, and now you've got one more slot. And this one, in my opinion, is flat out a toss-up. You've got options like another lefty like Joely or Jorge Benitez. You've got some of these underground guys like AJ Politi or Justin Hagenman. You've got guys with wipeout sliders like Greg Weissert. You could hold this spot for Zach Kelly and hope he's ready to go for opening day. There are a ton of different options here, and in my opinion, it's just essentially picking a name out of the hat at this point, right? So I'm going to go with Greg Weissert just because his slider has been absolutely disgusting. I think that alone wins him a spot in this bullpen as sort of a last roster spot, but this one, in my opinion, is extremely movable and something we'll see change a lot. And honestly, I think we'll see the bullpen change a lot this season as well. So that's what I think the 26-man roster for opening day is going to look like. And I think obviously when you're looking at this, things could change on a dime here, right? You've got a couple of weeks left of spring training. Injury bug has been going around. Heaven forbid it keeps going and you might end up with a couple of different injuries to start the regular season. This looks completely different. You've got, again, like I mentioned, some people in the free agent market right now that would make this team look a whole lot better. Will the Red Sox end up actually biting the bullet and bring one of those guys in? That could change everything, right? So there is some options here for what the Red Sox actual roster is going to look like come opening day, and a lot of things can change. But I think right now, when you're looking at this situation as a whole, this is the best path forward, in my opinion, for the 2024 Red Sox. Again, tomorrow we will be going over what I think the actual performance of this team is going to be. But until then, let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think? What did you agree with? What did you, I'm sure there will be, disagree on this with me? Were there people that you think should be on here that weren't on here? Was the lineup exactly what you thought it was going to be? Let me know where you disagree and where you agree with my 2024 Red Sox roster predictions. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Like I mentioned, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. We're only 200 away. We're so close. So make sure if you made it to the end here, you've hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button as well. You clearly enjoyed the video, and it helps these videos out a ton and would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you all in the red seats.